The fluorescent lights above hummed their usual tired song, casting everything in the diner with a sickly yellow glow that made even the freshest coffee look days old. My feet ached, that deep, bone-tired ache that starts in your heels and radiates up through your calves until your entire body feels like it's made of lead. I'd been on shift for 9 hours straight, and the smell of grease had seeped so deeply into my uniform that I knew no amount of washing would get it out. It never did. I moved between tables mechanically, my smile practiced and hollow. Table 4 needed a refill. Table 7 wanted their check. Table 2, the one by the window where the evening light struggled through grimy glass, had been occupied for the last hour by a group that made my skin crawl. They were young, loud, dressed in clothes that cost more than my monthly rent. The kind of people who came to this part of town when they wanted to feel edgy, to slum it for Instagram posts they'd caption with something ironic. 3 men, 2 women, all of them draped in designer labels and bored cruelty. "Excuse me," the blonde woman drawled as I passed, her voice dripping with the kind of condescension that came from never having to work for anything. "This coffee tastes like dishwater." "Are you sure you know how to make coffee, or is that too complicated?" Her friends laughed. The sound was sharp, cutting through the low murmur of conversation in the diner like breaking glass. I felt heat creep up my neck, that familiar burn of humiliation mixing with exhaustion. "I can get you a fresh pot, ma'am." "Ma'am?" She wrinkled her nose as if I'd insulted her. "God, how old do you think I am? And no, I don't want more of your terrible coffee." "I want to know how someone ends up working in a place like this." She looked me up and down, her gaze lingering on my stained apron, my scuffed shoes, the flyaway strands of hair that had escaped my ponytail. "Did you, drop out of high school? Get pregnant too young? What's your tragic backstory?" The table erupted in laughter again. One of the men raised his phone, angling it toward me. "This is gold. The authentic poor experience." My hands trembled as I clutched my order pad. I wanted to say something cutting, something that would wipe those smirks off their faces. But I needed this job. I needed the tips, pathetic as they were. I needed to keep my head down and survive another day. I started, my voice small. "You'll just what?" Another woman chimed in, leaning forward with false concern. "Cry? Oh my God, are you going to cry? Someone record this." The diner had gone quiet. I could feel every eye on me, feel the weight of my humiliation pressing down like a physical thing. Even Sam behind the counter had stopped wiping glasses, frozen in that awkward space between wanting to defend me and not wanting to cause a scene. I opened my mouth, though I had no idea what I was going to say. That's when the door opened. I felt it before I saw it, a change in the air, like the pressure drop before a storm. The laughter at table 2 died mid-note. The casual chatter throughout the diner faded to nothing. The man who entered moved like liquid shadow, all controlled power and dangerous grace. He wore a suit that probably cost more than everything in this diner combined, black, perfectly tailored, the kind of fabric that whispered money with every movement. But it wasn't the suit that made everyone freeze. It was something else. Something in the way he carried himself, in the absolute certainty of his presence. 2 men flanked him, both built like mountains compressed into human form, their eyes constantly scanning the room. But I barely noticed them. My attention was caught, held, trapped by the man in the center. He was younger than I expected someone with that much presence to be. Maybe early 30s, with dark hair swept back from a face that belonged in Renaissance paintings. Sharp cheekbones, a jaw that could cut glass, and eyes. God, those eyes. Even from across the room, I could feel their weight. Dark, almost black, and utterly unreadable. The scent reached me before he did. Expensive cologne mixing with something else. Something that smelled like danger and dark promises. Leather and smoke and something indefinable that made my breath catch. His gaze swept the diner with the kind of assessment that missed nothing. It lingered for half a heartbeat on the group at table 2, and I watched them shrink into their seats, suddenly very interested in their phones. The man with the camera had already put it away, his hands shaking slightly. Then those dark eyes found me. I froze. My heart stuttered in my chest, then started racing like I'd run a marathon. He looked at me the way a predator looks at something it's decided belongs to it, with absolute focus, with complete certainty, with an intensity that made my knees weak. He moved toward me, and the entire diner seemed to hold its breath. His guards stayed by the door, but their presence was a clear message. This space, this moment, was under their control. "You," he said when he reached me, his voice low and smooth, with just the hint of an accent I couldn't place. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. A claim. I managed to nod, though my throat had gone completely dry. His eyes flickered to the group at table 2, and something dangerous flashed in their depths. "Were they bothering you?" No, I mean... The words tangled on my tongue. Up close, he was even more devastating. I could see the precise line of his collar, the subtle gleam of what might have been a very expensive watch beneath his cuff, the way his presence seemed to fill all the space around me until there was no room for air. Don't lie to me. It wasn't harsh, but it held absolute authority, the kind of voice that expected obedience, and always received it. The blonde woman made a small, frightened sound. The man who'd been recording was trying to sink into the booth's cracked vinyl. "We were just joking around," one of them stammered. "We didn't mean..." "Be quiet." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The 2 words landed like a physical blow, and the table went silent. He turned his attention back to me, and his expression softened, though soft was a relative term. "What's your name?" "Emma." It came out barely above a whisper. "Emma Cross." "Emma." He repeated it like he was tasting it, learning the shape of it. "How much longer is your shift?" My mind scrambled to process the question. I glanced at the clock, 7:47 p.m. "About an hour." He nodded, then did something that stopped my heart completely. He reached out and gently took the order pad from my shaking hands, his fingers brushing mine. The contact sent electricity racing up my arm. "You're done for tonight." He turned to Sam, who looked like he'd forgotten how to breathe. "She's with me. Pay her for the full shift, plus whatever she would have made in tips." Yes, sir, of course." Sam was already reaching for the register. "Wait, I can't just..." I started, but he was already guiding me toward the door with a hand at the small of my back. The touch was light, almost respectful, but I felt the steel beneath it. This wasn't a request. "Your coat," he said. I pointed mutely to the hooks by the kitchen, and he signaled to one of his guards, who retrieved my worn jacket with the efficiency of a military operation. As we passed table 2, he paused. The group looked up at him with undisguised terror, and he leaned down slightly, his voice dropping to something that made ice run through my veins even though the words weren't directed at me. "If I hear you've been back to this establishment, if I hear you've bothered anyone here again, if I even hear you've thought about places like this..." He let the threat hang, unfinished. It was so much more effective than any explicit promise of violence. "Do we understand each other?" They nodded frantically, and I saw the blonde woman had tears streaming down her carefully made-up face. Outside, the evening air hit me like a slap. A black car idled at the curb, sleek, expensive, the windows tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. One of the guards opened the rear door, and I realized with mounting panic that I was expected to get in. I don't even know your name," I managed, my voice shaking. He paused, one hand on the car door, and looked at me with something that might have been amusement. Dante Russo." The name meant nothing to me, but I saw recognition flicker in Sam's face through the diner window. Saw him go pale. I really should get back to work, I tried, even though I could feel the futility of it. "No," Dante said simply. "You shouldn't." He waited, and I realized he was giving me a choice, or the illusion of one. I could walk away, I could go back inside, but we both knew what I would choose. Because despite the fear coursing through me, despite every instinct screaming that this man was dangerous, I was also painfully aware that I'd never felt so seen in my entire life. I got in the car. The door closed with a solid final sound, and Dante slid in beside me, The interior smelled like leather and that same intoxicating cologne, and I was suddenly, acutely aware of how small the space was, how close he was sitting. The car pulled away from the curb, smooth and silent, and I watched the diner, my safe, predictable, soul-crushing diner, disappear into the evening. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice embarrassingly small. Dante turned to look at me, and in the dim interior light, his face was all sharp angles and shadows. "Somewhere better than that place, but You need to eat." It wasn't a question. Real food, not whatever they serve there. "When was the last time you had a proper meal?" I couldn't remember. "Toast this morning? Half a sandwich yesterday?" He saw my hesitation, and his jaw tightened. That's what I thought. We drove through the city, and I watched the familiar streets give way to neighborhoods I'd only seen in magazines. Restaurants with names in French and Italian. Boutiques with single dresses displayed in windows like art. Buildings that gleamed with old money and new power. The car stopped in front of a restaurant that had no sign, just a discreet brass number on a black door. A valet appeared immediately, and Dante's guard opened our door. He stepped out first, then offered me his hand. I took it, and he helped me out of the car with a gentleness that contrasted sharply with the raw power I could feel coiled beneath his civilized exterior. Inside, the maitre d' saw Dante and immediately transformed into a portrait of deferential welcome. "Mr. Russo, your table is ready." Of course it was. I had the distinct impression that a table would always be ready for Dante Russo, no matter when he arrived or whether he had a reservation. We were led to a private corner, secluded from the rest of the dining room by subtle architectural choices and tasteful screens. The lighting was low, intimate, and I became painfully aware of my stained uniform, my unwashed hair, my complete lack of belonging in this space. Dante noticed, because apparently he noticed everything. "You're perfect," he said quietly as we sat. "Don't think otherwise." The waiter appeared with menus and wine, and Dante ordered with the casual confidence of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. I didn't even look at the menu. I couldn't have pronounced half the items anyway. When the waiter disappeared, Dante leaned back and studied me with that unsettling intensity. "Tell me about them." "Who?" "The people at that table, the ones who were mocking you." I shrugged, trying for casual and probably failing. "Just tourists. People with too much money and not enough manners. Have they been there before? I don't know. Maybe? I don't really." "Emma." My name in his mouth was a command and a caress. "Don't minimize what happened. They humiliated you publicly. They enjoyed it." The words brought it all back, the laughter, the phone cameras, the weight of everyone's eyes. I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes and blinked them back furiously. "Hey." His hand covered mine on the table, warm and solid. "I'm not criticizing you. I'm trying to understand. Why?" The question burst out before I could stop it. "Why do you care? You don't know me. You walked into a random diner and I gestured helplessly at our surroundings." "This doesn't make sense." Something flickered across his face, too quick to read. "No," he agreed, "it doesn't." The food arrived. Course after course of things I couldn't name, but that tasted like heaven. Dante ate with elegant economy, but I noticed he watched me more than his own plate, making sure I actually ate, that I tried everything. "Better than diner food?" he asked with the ghost of a smile. "Better than anything I've ever had," I admitted. The wine was making me warm, loosening the tight knot of anxiety in my chest. But it was also making me reckless. "Who are you, really?" I asked. "People don't act the way everyone acted around you unless what? Unless you're someone dangerous." He didn't deny it. Instead, he took a slow sip of his wine, his eyes never leaving mine. Would it matter if I was? It should have. God, it should have. But sitting there in that perfect restaurant with this beautiful, terrifying man looking at me like I was something precious and breakable, I couldn't make myself care. "I don't know," I whispered. His expression intensified, and I felt something shift in the air between us. Something inevitable and irreversible. "Good," he said softly. "Because Emma Cross, You just became mine to protect, and I don't give back what's mine." The words should have terrified me. Instead, they sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with a dark, dangerous thrill I'd never felt before. I didn't know it then, but my life as I knew it had just ended. And something far more complicated, far more dangerous, had just begun. I woke up the next morning in my own bed, but everything felt different, wrong, like I'd been transplanted back into a life that no longer fit. The apartment was the same, peeling paint on the walls, the radiator that clanked and hissed but barely produced heat, the thin curtains that did nothing to keep out the gray morning light. But I wasn't the same. Something fundamental had shifted inside me last night, like a tectonic plate moving beneath the surface. Dante had driven me home after dinner. The ride had been quiet, charged with an electricity that made my skin hum. When we'd pulled up to my building, a 5-story walk-up in a neighborhood where gunshots were more common than birdsong, I'd seen something flash across his face. Anger, maybe, or disgust. "You live here?" His voice had been carefully neutral, but I'd heard the edge beneath it. "It's what I can afford." I'd tried to keep the defensiveness out of my tone and failed. He'd gotten out of the car with me, and his guards had immediately flanked us, their eyes scanning the dark street with professional wariness. One of them had checked the building entrance, the stairwell, before Dante had allowed me to go inside. "Which floor?" "4th. He'd walked me up all 4 flights, and I'd been acutely aware of him behind me. Solid, protective, his presence filling the narrow stairwell. At my door, I'd fumbled with my keys, my hands shaking. "Thank you for dinner," I'd managed. "It was Emma." He'd waited until I looked at him. "Lock your door. Keep your phone on. If anything happens, anything at all, you call me." He'd handed me a card with a single phone number embossed in black. No name, no title, just those digits. "I don't understand what's happening," I'd whispered. "Neither do I." For the first time, he'd looked almost uncertain, but I meant what I said. "You're under my protection now." "Why?" "Because when I saw you standing there letting those people tear you apart, something in me..." He'd stopped, his jaw tightening. "Go inside, Emma. Before I do something we'll both regret." I'd gone, and I'd heard him wait until I'd locked the door before his footsteps had retreated down the stairs. Now, in the harsh light of morning, I stared at that card on my nightstand. In the darkness, with wine warming my blood and Dante's presence overwhelming my senses, everything had seemed almost magical. Now it just seemed insane. I was supposed to work the lunch shift today. The thought of going back to the diner, of facing Sam's questions, and the other waitress's curiosity made my stomach twist, but I needed the money. I always needed the money. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Don't go to work today." My heart lurched. I stared at the message, then at the card, then back at the phone. "How did you get my number?" The response came immediately. "I get everything I want, Emma. Stay home. I need to work. I have bills." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Not anymore. Before I could process that, another message came through, a screenshot of a bank transfer. To my account. The amount made my vision blur. What is this? "Payment for lost wages. Don't argue." I called the number. He answered on the first ring. "This is insane," I said without preamble. "You can't just..." "I can." His voice was calm, absolute. "And I will. You're not going back to that diner, Emma. You don't get to make that decision for me." "Don't I?" There was something dangerous in his tone now. "Tell me honestly, do you want to go back? Do you want to spend your day having people like last night look through you, treating you like you're nothing?" The words hit too close to home. "That's not the point." "It's exactly the point. You deserve better than that place." "And what do I deserve? To be some Mafia boss's charity case?" The words were out before I could stop them. Silence on the other end, long enough that I wondered if I'd crossed a line. If he'd hang up, and I'd never hear from him again. "Is that what you think you are?" His voice had dropped to something low and dangerous. "Charity? I don't know what I am. I don't know what any of this is." "Then let me make it clear." I heard movement, the sound of a door closing. You're not charity, Emma. You're something I intend to keep. The money isn't payment. It's protection. You will not worry about bills. You will not worry about rent or food or anything else. That's not negotiable. Everything is negotiable. Not with me. A pause. I'm coming over. What? No, you can't just... What's your apartment number? I hesitated, and I heard him make a sound that might have been amusement. I can find it in 30 seconds, or you can tell me. Your choice. 4C, I said, defeated. But my apartment is a mess, and I haven't showered in 20 minutes. He hung up. I stood frozen for a moment, then panic galvanized me into motion. I stripped off my sleep clothes, an oversized t-shirt with holes and shorts that had seen better days, and jumped in the shower. The water was lukewarm at best, the pressure pathetic, but I scrubbed quickly, washed my hair, tried to make myself presentable. What do you wear when a man like Dante Russo is coming to your apartment? Everything I owned was worn or stained or both. I settled on jeans without holes and a simple black sweater that at least fit well. I was still trying to do something with my wet hair when the knock came. He stood in my doorway looking like he'd stepped out of a magazine. Dark jeans, a black shirt with the sleeves rolled to reveal forearms that made my mouth go dry. A leather jacket that probably cost more than my yearly rent. Behind him, one of his guards stood at the top of the stairs. You came alone? I asked, which was stupid because clearly he hadn't. Marco stays outside. He stepped into my apartment without waiting for an invitation, and I watched him take in the cramped space. The kitchenette that was really just a hot plate and a mini fridge, the futon that served as both couch and bed, the single window that looked out onto a brick wall. His expression went carefully blank, which was somehow worse than if he'd shown disgust. How long have you lived here? 3 years. And before that? Foster care, group homes mostly. The words came out flat. I'd learned a long time ago not to expect pity. Something shifted in his face. You have no family? Not that wants me. I crossed my arms, defensive. Look, I know it's not much, but it's mine. I pay for it myself. I don't need... He crossed the space between us in 2 strides and pulled me against him. The movement was so sudden, so unexpected that I gasped. His arms came around me, and he held me like I was something infinitely precious, like he was afraid I might disappear. Dante? My voice was muffled against his chest. You don't have to be alone anymore. The words were rough, almost angry. Do you understand me? You don't have to fight for everything by yourself. I should have pushed him away, should have been scared or angry or something other than this. This overwhelming relief at being held, at feeling safe for the first time in longer than I could remember. I don't understand you, I whispered. I don't understand myself either. He pulled back enough to look at me, his hands coming up to frame my face. From the moment I walked into that diner and saw you, something clicked into place, like I'd been waiting my whole life without knowing what I was waiting for. That's crazy. Yes. His thumb traced my cheekbone with devastating gentleness, but here we are. His phone buzzed. He ignored it. It buzzed again, insistent, and he cursed under his breath in Italian before pulling it out. His expression changed as he read the screen, something dark and dangerous sliding over his features like a mask. What's wrong? Nothing you need to worry about, but his voice had gone cold, and I knew he was lying. Dante, I have to go. He stepped back, and I felt the loss of his warmth like a physical thing. But I'm leaving Marco outside. He'll make sure you're safe. Safe from what? He paused at the door, and when he looked back at me, his eyes held something that made my blood run cold. From people who might want to use you to get to me. What does that mean? It means that by being seen with me, by accepting my protection, you've painted a target on your back. He said it matter-of-factly, like he was discussing the weather. It also means that anyone who tries to touch you will learn what happens when someone takes what's mine. The possessiveness in his voice should have terrified me. Instead, it sent heat pooling low in my stomach. I didn't ask for this. No, he agreed, you didn't. But you have it anyway. He pulled out his phone and typed something quickly. I'm having some things delivered. Don't refuse them. What things? Things you need. He was already heading down the stairs, Marco falling into step behind him. "Lock the door, Emma, and keep your phone on." Then he was gone, and I was left standing in my apartment, my heart racing, my world tilted completely off its axis. The delivery started an hour later. First came the groceries, not just food, but good food. Fresh vegetables, meat from a butcher, bread from a bakery, things I'd seen in stores but never bought because they were too expensive. The delivery man set everything in my tiny kitchenette and left without a word. Then came the clothes. Box after box of them, jeans that actually fit, sweaters soft enough to make me cry, a winter coat that looked like it could withstand Arctic temperatures, shoes, boots, things I needed but had been too proud or too poor to buy. I called him. "You need to stop." "No." He sounded distracted, like he was in the middle of something. I heard voices in the background, tense and rapid. "Dante, this is too much. It's not nearly enough. There's more coming. Don't argue with me about this, Emma." "I don't have time right now. What's going on? Where are you?" A pause. "Handling something. I'll call you later." He hung up before I could respond. The rest of the day passed in a surreal blur. More deliveries came. A new laptop, a phone that was definitely not the cracked piece of garbage I'd been using, blankets and pillows that transformed my futon into something actually comfortable. Every gift felt like a chain, beautiful and soft, but binding me to him nonetheless. I should have refused it all, should have packed it up and sent it back. But I didn't, because for the first time in my life, someone was taking care of me, and I was too tired and too hungry for affection to push it away. Marco stood guard outside my door all day. I brought him coffee and a sandwich at lunch, and he'd looked surprised but accepted it with a gruff thanks. He was built like a tank, with hands that looked like they could crush concrete, but he had kind eyes. "How long have you worked for Dante?" I asked. 10 years. Is he good to work for?" Marco looked at me for a long moment. "Mr. Russo is a complicated man, but he's loyal to those who are loyal to him. And he protects what's his. I'm not his." Marco's expression said he didn't believe me. "If you say so, miss," Dante called as the sun was setting, painting my brick wall view in shades of orange and pink. "How was your day?" His voice was warm, intimate, like we'd been doing this for years instead of hours, confusing, overwhelming. I hesitated. "Thank you, for everything, but Dante, come to dinner with me tonight. I don't think, please." The word sounded rusty, like he didn't use it often. "I want to see you." I should have said no. Should have told him this was all too fast, too much, too dangerous. But I remembered the way he'd held me that morning, the way his voice had roughened when he'd told me I didn't have to be alone anymore. "Okay," I whispered. "I'll pick you up in an hour." This time, when I got ready, I could wear the new clothes. The dress I chose was simple but beautiful. Deep blue, fitted but not tight, with a neckline that was modest but showed just enough to be interesting. It made my eyes look brighter, my skin glow. I looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself. When Dante knocked, I opened the door to find him staring at me with an intensity that stole my breath. "You're beautiful," he said, and it sounded like a revelation. "It's the dress. It's you." He stepped inside, and I saw something fierce and possessive flare in his eyes. "Christo, Emma, do you have any idea what you do to me?" Before I could answer, he'd pulled me against him and claimed my mouth with his. The kiss was hungry, demanding, and absolutely devastating. His hands tangled in my hair, angled my head exactly where he wanted it, and I melted into him completely. When he finally pulled back, we were both breathing hard. "We should go," he said roughly. "Before I forget, I wanted to feed you first." "First?" My voice came out embarrassingly breathless. His smile was dark and promising. "First." Dinner was at his penthouse, a sprawling space high above the city with views that made my knees weak. A private chef had prepared everything, and we ate at a table that could have seated 12 but felt intimate with just the two of us. He asked me questions about my childhood, my dreams, things I'd never told anyone, and I answered, because something about him made me want to spill all my secrets. "What do you want, Emma?" he asked as we finished dessert. If you could have anything, to matter, I said before I could think better of it, to be more than just invisible. His hand covered mine on the table. You matter to me. You don't even know me. Then let me learn. His thumb traced circles on my wrist and I felt my pulse jump. Stay tonight. The request hung in the air between us, heavy with promise. I don't do this, I whispered. I've never. Never? I shook my head, embarrassed. I've been too busy surviving to live. Something blazed in his eyes, possession and pride and dark satisfaction. Good. He stood and offered me his hand. Come with me. I took it and let him lead me into the unknown. His bedroom was a study in controlled luxury. Dark walls, enormous bed with sheets that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe used to, floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the glittering city below, but I barely noticed any of it. My entire focus had narrowed to the man standing before me, his dark eyes burning with an intensity that made my knees weak. We don't have to do anything you're not ready for, Dante said quietly, his hand settling on my waist with devastating gentleness. Just being near you is enough. The words undid something inside me. My whole life, I'd been too much or not enough, always adjusting myself to fit into spaces that didn't want me. But standing there in his arms, I felt like I was exactly right. I want this, I whispered. I want you. His control snapped. I felt it in the way his grip tightened, in the low growl that rumbled from his chest as he pulled me against him and kissed me like a man starving. His hands were everywhere, threading through my hair, sliding down my spine, pulling me impossibly closer. I melted into him, giving myself over to sensations I'd never allowed myself to feel. He walked me backward until my legs hit the bed, then lowered me onto those impossibly soft sheets with a reverence that made tears prick my eyes. He followed me down, his weight settling over me in a way that felt protective rather than confining. Tell me if you want me to stop, he murmured against my throat, his lips tracing a path that made me shiver. Tell me if it's too much. Don't stop, I breathed. Please don't stop. What followed was a claiming, deliberate, thorough, devastating. He mapped every inch of my skin with his hands and mouth, learning what made me gasp, what made me arch against him. He was patient, despite the tension I could feel coiled in every muscle, taking his time to ensure my pleasure before seeking his own. When he finally moved inside me, the initial pain gave way to something transcendent. He held me through it, whispering words in Italian I didn't understand but felt in my bones. And when I shattered in his arms, he followed moments later, my name on his lips like a prayer, or a curse, or both. Afterward, he held me against his chest, his heartbeat steady beneath my ear. His fingers traced idle patterns on my shoulder, and I felt more at peace than I could ever remember feeling. Stay, he said into the darkness. Not just tonight. Stay with me. What does that mean? It means you move in here. It means you let me take care of you properly. It means... He paused, and I felt tension return to his body. It means you're mine, Emma, completely. I should have been frightened by the possessiveness in his voice, should have recognized the cage he was building around me, golden and beautiful, but a cage nonetheless, but lying there in his arms, warm and sated and safe. I couldn't bring myself to care. Okay, I whispered. His arms tightened around me. You won't regret this. I'll give you everything. I don't need everything. I just need... What? Tell me what you need. This, I said simply. Someone who sees me. He pressed a kiss to my temple. I see you, Bella. Every part of you. I fell asleep wrapped in his protection. And for once, the nightmares that usually plagued my sleep stayed away. I woke to sunlight streaming through windows I'd forgotten to close, and the smell of fresh coffee. Dante was already dressed, black pants, white shirt unbuttoned at the collar, looking like he'd stepped out of an Italian Vogue spread. He sat in a chair near the bed, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Good morning, I said, suddenly shy. In the bright light of day, what we'd done felt both more real and more surreal. Good morning. His voice was warm, but there was something tight around his eyes. We need to talk. My stomach dropped. Here it was, the morning after regret, the realization that he'd made a mistake. Okay. He stood and came to sit on the edge of the bed, taking my hand in his. I need you to understand what being with me means, what I am. You're involved in organized crime. It wasn't a question. I'd pieced it together from the fear people showed him, the guards, the power that clung to him like a second skin. His jaw tightened. Yes, my family. We control most of the business in this city, legitimate and otherwise. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know what you're getting into. Being with me, accepting my protection, it makes you a target. There are people who would hurt you to get to me. The words should have terrified me. Instead, I felt a strange calm settle over me. And you'll protect me from them, with my life. The vow was immediate, absolute. But Emma, this life, it's not easy. There will be things you can't know, places you can't go, people you can't trust. You'll have guards following you everywhere. Your freedom will be limited. My freedom? I almost laughed. Dante, I've been trapped my whole life. Trapped in poverty and shitty apartments and jobs that treat me like I'm nothing. At least this cage comes with someone who actually cares. Something fierce and possessive flared in his eyes. I more than care, Emma. I'm obsessed with you. From the moment I saw you, you've consumed my thoughts. It's not healthy. It's not sane. But it's real. Then we'll be crazy together. He pulled me into his arms, and I felt him shudder. You have no idea what you do to me. The control I have to maintain, the walls I've built. You shatter them all. His phone rang, shattering the moment. He glanced at the screen and cursed. I have to take this. He stepped out onto the balcony, and through the glass, I watched his expression harden into something cold and dangerous. He was gesturing sharply, his voice raised though I couldn't hear the words. This was the man others feared, the Mafia boss, the predator, the man who controlled the city's underworld with an iron fist. When he came back inside, his expression was carefully neutral, but I could see the storm brewing beneath. What's wrong? Nothing for you to worry about. He was already pulling on his jacket, checking his phone. I need to handle something. Marco will stay with you. Dante, I'll be back tonight. He kissed me hard and fast, then pulled back to look at me with burning intensity. Don't leave this penthouse. Don't answer the door for anyone except Marco. Promise me. I promise, but promise me, Emma. His hands gripped my shoulders. This is important. I promise. He left, and the apartment felt cavernous and empty without him. I wandered through the space, taking in details I'd missed the night before. Everything was expensive, tasteful, and utterly impersonal. There were no photos, no personal touches, nothing that spoke of the man who lived here beyond his wealth. I found his office, a room he probably hadn't meant for me to enter, but the door was ajar. Inside, everything was dark wood and leather, with a massive desk dominating the space. Papers were scattered across the surface, and I knew I shouldn't look. But curiosity won out. Most of it was in Italian or coded in ways I couldn't understand. But one folder caught my eye. Manila, thick, with my name written on the tab in bold letters. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were details of my life laid out with clinical precision. My birth certificate, mother unknown, father listed as deceased, records from every foster home, every group home, every shitty apartment I'd lived in. School records, medical records, employment history, bank statements showing my pathetic balance, and photos, recent photos, of me walking to work, leaving my apartment, sitting alone in the diner during slow periods. Photos taken before we'd ever met. The folder slipped from my numb fingers and scattered across the floor. My vision blurred as the implications crashed over me. The chance meeting. It hadn't been chance at all. He'd been watching me, hunting me, and I'd walked right into his trap. The door opened behind me, and I spun around to find Marco standing there, his expression grim. Miss Cross, you shouldn't be in here. How long? My voice was shaking. How long was he watching me before he walked into that diner? Marco's silence was answer enough. Get out. I was backing away from him, from the scattered papers, from the evidence of my own stupidity. Get out. I need to think. I can't leave you alone. Mr. Russo's orders. I don't care about his orders. The words came out as a scream. He's been stalking me. He orchestrated everything. Miss Cross, don't. I held up a shaking hand. Just give me space. Please. Marco nodded and stepped back into the hallway, pulling the door closed. But I knew he'd be right outside, a prison guard for a prisoner who'd walked into her cell willingly. I sank onto Dante's leather couch, my mind racing. The past 2 days replayed in my head, but now every moment was tainted. His appearance at the diner, had he arranged for those people to mock me? Had he orchestrated my humiliation so he could play savior? The gifts, the protection, the intensity of his attention, it had all felt too good to be true. Because it was. My phone, the new one he'd given me, buzzed with a message. "How are you doing, Bella?" I stared at the screen, rage and betrayal warring with the treacherous part of me that still responded to his endearments. I found the folder. 3 dots appeared immediately, disappeared, appeared again. "I'm coming home. Don't bother. Emma, let me explain." "Explain what? That you've been stalking me? That everything between us is based on a lie?" My phone rang. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again, and again. Finally, I answered. "What? Don't run." His voice was tight with something that sounded like panic. "Please, Bella, don't run from me. Give me one reason why I shouldn't, because despite how it looks, everything I feel for you is real." He was speaking quickly, urgently. "Yes, I knew about you before we met. Yes, I engineered our first encounter. But what happened after, what's happening between us, that's real, Emma. That's all real. How can I believe anything you say?" "Because you feel it too, this connection between us. It's not something that can be faked or forced. You know that." I wanted to deny it, but the words caught in my throat because he was right. The way my body responded to his, the way my heart raced when he was near, the sense of safety and belonging I felt in his arms. I couldn't fake that even if I wanted to. "Why me?" I whispered. "Out of everyone in this city, why did you choose me?" Silence stretched between us, and when he finally spoke, his voice was raw. "Because when I saw your photo, something in me recognized you. Like I'd been searching my whole life without knowing what I was looking for, and suddenly there you were. It sounds insane. It is insane. Yes. But it's also the truth." I heard a car door slam, an engine start. "I'm 10 minutes away. Please, Emma, let me explain properly." I hung up and stared at the phone in my hand. I could leave, should leave, call the police, though I suspected Dante owned half of them. Run somewhere he couldn't find me, though I suspected nowhere was far enough. Or I could stay and hear him out, could try to understand the mind of a man who thought stalking was an acceptable prelude to love. Marco knocked softly. "Miss Cross?" "Mr. Russo is pulling up now." I heard the private elevator engage, heard it rise to the penthouse. My heart pounded against my ribs like it was trying to escape the cage of my chest. The doors opened, and Dante stepped out. He looked disheveled, his hair mussed like he'd been running his hands through it, his shirt wrinkled, his eyes wild with something that looked like genuine fear. "Don't look at me like that," he said hoarsely. "Like you're afraid of me. Aren't I supposed to be? You've been watching me, collecting information about me like I'm some kind of project. You're not a project." He took a step toward me, and I instinctively backed away. Pain flashed across his face. "Emma, please, tell me why. Make me understand why you thought any of this was okay." He ran a hand through his hair, and I saw it shake. 3 months ago, one of my associates showed me a photo. He was trying to buy the building you live in. Wanted to tear it down for development. He sent pictures of all the tenants, asking if any of them would be a problem. His eyes met mine. "I saw your photo and I couldn't breathe. You were at your window, looking out at nothing. And you looked so lost, so alone." And I felt it here. He pressed a fist to his chest, like something clicking into place. "So you decided to stalk me?" "I decided to learn about you, to understand who you were before I approached you. I needed to know if what I felt was real or just," he gestured helplessly, "madness." And was it? Real? More real than anything I've ever felt. He took another step closer, and this time I didn't back away. I know I should have approached you honestly. I know what I did was wrong. But Emma, if I had just walked up to you on the street, would you have given me a chance? Would you have looked twice at someone like me? He was right, and we both knew it. I would have been terrified, would have run in the opposite direction. The people at the diner, I said slowly. Did you? No. His voice turned hard. I had nothing to do with that. I was there because I knew you worked that shift, yes. I'd been planning to come in, order coffee, try to talk to you. But when I walked in and saw them humiliating you, his hands clenched into fists. I wanted to kill them, Emma. Actually, kill them. The only thing that stopped me was not wanting to terrify you. I believed him. God help me. I believed every word. This is so messed up, I whispered. I know. He closed the distance between us, and this time I let him. His hands came up to cup my face with heartbreaking tenderness. I'm not a good man, Bella. I've done things that would give you nightmares. But with you, for you, I want to be better. I don't need better. I need honest. Then here's honesty. I'm obsessed with you, possessive of you. The thought of another man looking at you makes me want to commit violence. I want to keep you here, safe, mine, where nothing can touch you. It's not healthy. It's not normal. But it's what I feel. The words should have sent me running. Instead, they sent heat pooling through me, made my heart race for entirely different reasons. I'm scared, I admitted. Of me? Of how much I want this. Of how easy it would be to let you consume me completely. His thumb traced my bottom lip, then let me. Let me consume you, and I'll let you consume me in return. We'll be each other's destruction and salvation. He kissed me then, and it tasted like desperation and promise, and the beginning of something that would either save us or destroy us both. When we finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, I made my decision. No more lies, I said firmly. No more secrets. If this is going to work, I need complete honesty. Agreed. His arms tightened around me. Ask me anything. The business you had to handle today, what was it? His expression darkened. Someone tried to move into our territory. They've been dealt with. Dealt with how? Do you really want to know? I thought about it, then shook my head. Not yet. But someday I will. Someday I'll want to know every dark corner of your world. And when that day comes, I'll show you everything. He pressed his forehead to mine. I'm not going to lose you, Emma. Not now that I've found you. You're so sure this will work. I've never been more certain of anything. His voice was fierce with conviction. You're mine, and I'm yours. That's not going to change. In the back of my mind, a small voice warned that this was dangerous, that I was falling too fast, that men like Dante Russo destroyed the things they loved. But I silenced it, because for the first time in my life, I felt whole, seen, cherished. And if that was madness, then I'd gladly be insane. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of adjustment and discovery. Moving into Dante's penthouse had been surreal, going from my cramped apartment to a space that felt more like a luxury hotel than a home. But slowly, I'd begun to make it ours. Fresh flowers on the dining table, books scattered on the coffee table, my worn but beloved blanket draped over the pristine leather couch. Dante watched these small acts of claiming with something like reverence, as if each personal touch I added was a gift. And maybe it was. Maybe by making myself at home in his space, I was telling him I was choosing to stay. The guards became familiar faces. Marco, always outside whatever room I was in. Antonio, who drove us everywhere and had a surprisingly gentle smile. Luca, younger than the others, who blushed whenever I spoke to him. They were my constant shadows, and I'd learned to accept their presence as the price of being Dante's. Because that's what I was now, Dante's. His woman. His obsession. The words should have chafed, but instead they settled over me like a comfortable weight. He was insatiable in his need to know me, to understand every facet of who I was. We'd spend hours talking, about my childhood, my dreams, the books I loved, the future I'd never let myself imagine. And slowly, carefully, he'd begun to reveal himself to me as well. His father had built the family empire through ruthlessness and blood. Dante had inherited it at 25 when the old man had a heart attack, and he'd spent the last 7 years consolidating power and eliminating threats. He spoke of it matter-of-factly, without pride or shame, simply stating facts. "Does it bother you?" he'd asked one night as we lay tangled together. Knowing what I do, I'd thought about it carefully. It should. But I can't separate who you are now from what you've done, and who you are now, with me. That's what matters. His arms had tightened around me. "You see the best in me. I don't deserve it. Maybe not, but you have it anyway." Now I stood in front of the floor-length mirror in the bedroom, adjusting the dress Dante had bought for tonight. It was stunning. Deep emerald silk that clung to curves I hadn't known I had, with a neckline that was modest, yet somehow devastatingly sexy. Diamond earrings glittered at my ears. A matching necklace at my throat. "You're staring," I said without turning around. Dante's reflection appeared behind mine, his hand settling on my waist. He was in a tuxedo, looking like every fantasy I'd never let myself have. "Can you blame me? You're breathtaking." Tonight was important. A charity gala where all of the city's elite would gather. It would be my first public appearance as Dante's, and I was terrified. What if I mess up? Say the wrong thing? Impossible. He pressed a kiss to my bare shoulder. "You'll be perfect. Just stay close to me." The ballroom was overwhelming, crystal chandeliers dripping light, champagne flowing freely, women draped in jewels that could probably pay off third-world debt. I felt their eyes on us as we entered, felt the weight of their judgment and curiosity. Dante's hand at the small of my back was steady, grounding. "Breathe, Bella. They're just people. People who think I don't belong here. You belong wherever I say you belong." His voice carried just enough edge to remind me who he was, what he was capable of. We moved through the crowd, and I watched how people reacted to him. Men straightened, eyes calculating, measuring threats and opportunities. Women's gazes lingered with barely concealed desire, but Dante never let go of me, never let there be any doubt about who held his attention. "Dante, I didn't expect to see you here." A man approached, tall, silver-haired, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "And who is this lovely creature?" "Emma Cross." Dante's introduction was clipped. "Emma, this is Vincent Moretti. He owns the casino on 5th. Vincent took my hand, his grip lingering a fraction too long. "A pleasure." "Tell me, Miss Cross, how did you meet our Dante? He's usually so particular about company." The implied insult was clear. I felt Dante tense beside me, but before he could speak, I smiled sweetly. Actually, he rescued me from some rather unpleasant people. Very knight in shining armor, though I suspect his armor is considerably more expensive than most. Vincent's eyes sharpened with interest. "A rescue? How romantic." "Isn't it?" I leaned slightly into Dante, though between us I think he was looking for an excuse to be heroic. A genuine smile crossed Vincent's face. "Smart and beautiful. You've done well for yourself, Russo." As Vincent moved away, Dante's lips brushed my ear. "That was perfectly handled. He was testing you." "I know." I'd recognized the game immediately. The subtle put-downs masked as curiosity, the attempts to rattle me. Growing up in foster care had taught me how to navigate social warfare. The evening progressed, and I met more of Dante's world. Business associates who spoke in careful euphemisms, politicians who shook his hand with fear in their eyes, society women who looked at me like I was a temporary distraction, something to be tolerated until Dante came to his senses. But then a woman approached, and everything changed. She was stunning, tall, perfectly styled, wearing a red dress that probably cost more than my old apartment. And the way she looked at Dante held a familiarity that made my stomach clench. "Dante." Her voice was warm honey. "It's been too long. Isabella." Something shifted in Dante's expression. Not warmth exactly, but recognition. History. Her dark eyes slid to me, dismissive. "And you've brought company. This is Emma, my girlfriend." The possessiveness in his voice was unmistakable. "Girlfriend?" Isabella laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "How quaint. Tell me, does she know about—" "Careful." Dante's voice dropped to something dangerous. Think very carefully about what you're about to say. Isabella's smile was sharp. Of course. How rude of me. She turned to me. I'm Isabella Conti. Dante and I were engaged once. Did he mention that? The words landed like a physical blow. I kept my expression neutral, but inside, everything tilted. He mentioned his past included some poor choices. I assumed you were one of them. Dante made a choking sound that might have been laughter. Isabella's eyes flashed with anger. Poor choice? We were together for 3 years. We were supposed to be married. And yet, here he is with me. I met her gaze steadily, which suggests he made the right decision after all. You little... Isabella. Dante's hand tightened on my waist. This conversation is over. Walk away. She looked between us, and something venomous crossed her face. She won't last, Dante. Girls like her never do. Once you get bored of playing savior, you'll remember what real class looks like. She swept away, leaving tension crackling in her wake. Why didn't you tell me about her? I asked quietly. Because she doesn't matter. Hasn't mattered for 2 years. What happened? His jaw tightened. She wanted power more than she wanted me. When she realized I'd never give her control of the family business, she showed her true colors. We ended it. And she married a banker 6 months later. She still wants you. She wants what I represent. There's a difference. He turned me to face him. You, Emma, you wanted me before you knew what I was. That's the difference. Before I could respond, a commotion erupted near the entrance. Raised voices, the sound of something breaking. Dante's entire body went rigid, his hand moving to the small of his back where I knew he kept a gun. Marco, he said sharply, and suddenly his guards were surrounding us, moving us toward a side exit. What's happening? Stay close. His voice had gone cold, all traces of the man who held me gently replaced by the predator underneath. We were almost to the exit when shots rang out. The ballroom erupted into chaos, screaming, people running, the sharp crack of gunfire echoing off marble walls. Dante pushed me behind him, his body a shield, as Marco and Antonio returned fire toward unseen attackers. Get her out, Dante ordered. Now. I'm not leaving you. You are. He grabbed my face, his eyes burning with intensity. Emma, I need you safe. Please. Marco pulled me toward the service entrance as more shots erupted. I looked back to see Dante crouched behind a column, his weapon drawn, his face set in lines of deadly calm. This was his world. Violence and danger, and calculated risk. And I was being torn from him right when he needed. The thought cut off as Marco shoved me into a service corridor. Antonio was ahead of us, weapon drawn, clearing the path. My heels clicked against tile as we ran, the sounds of chaos fading behind us. We burst into the kitchen, all stainless steel and stopped clocks of frozen staff, through another door, down cement stairs, into an underground parking garage where a car waited, engine running. Marco pushed me inside and climbed in after me. Antonio took the driver's seat, and we were moving before my door even closed. What about Dante? My voice shook. He can handle himself, Miss Cross. Our job is keeping you safe. We drove in tense silence, taking turns too fast, running lights. I kept my phone clutched in my hand, willing it to ring, needing to know Dante was okay. Finally, it buzzed. I'm fine. Stay with Marco. I'll come to you soon. What happened? Rivals making a move. Nothing I can't handle. Are you hurt? No. Scared, but not hurt. Good, I'll make them pay for frightening you. The words should have been disturbing. Instead, they sent a dark thrill through me. This was who he was, a man who responded to threats with overwhelming force, who protected what was his with ruthless efficiency. We arrived at a different building, not the penthouse, but something smaller, secure. A safe house, Marco called it. The apartment was furnished but impersonal, clearly maintained for exactly these situations. How often does this happen? I asked, as Marco checked the windows, ensured the locks were secure. Rarely. Mr. Russo has kept the peace for years. But sometimes, someone gets ideas above their station. And what happens to them? Marco's expression was grim. They learn why getting ideas was a mistake. Hours crawled by. I paced, unable to sit still. jumping at every sound. Marco stood guard by the door, patient and unmovable. Finally, near midnight, I heard voices in the hallway. The lock disengaged and Dante strode in. He had blood on his shirt. Not much, but enough. His knuckles were raw, his expression thunderous, but when he saw me, everything in his face softened. Emma. My name was relief and reverence. I ran to him, and he caught me, his arms crushing me against him. You're hurt. Not my blood. He pulled back to look at me, his hands running over me as if checking for injuries. Are you okay? Did anyone touch you? I'm fine. Marco got me out. I touched his face, needing the contact. What happened? The Calabresi family decided to test my resolve. They chose poorly. His voice was flat, empty of emotion. They won't make that mistake again, did you? Yes. He met my eyes steadily, letting me see the truth. I did what needed to be done. I should have been horrified. Should have pulled away from the man admitting to violence so casually, but all I felt was relief that he was alive, that he'd come back to me. Take me home, I whispered. Take me home and hold me. Something blazed in his eyes, gratitude and possession and desperate need. Always, Bella. Always. The aftermath of the gala attack changed everything. Dante became hypervigilant, increasing security until I had guards shadowing my every movement. The penthouse felt less like a home and more like a fortress. Cameras monitoring every entrance, reinforced doors, panic rooms I prayed we'd never need to use. But it was the change in Dante himself that unsettled me most. He'd always been protective, possessive even, but now that intensity had amplified to something almost suffocating. He barely let me out of his sight. When business forced him away, he called constantly, needed updates from Marco every hour, his paranoia a living thing between us. You need to breathe, I told him one morning after he'd checked the locks for the third time. I'm safe here. You were safe at the gala too, until you weren't. His voice was tight, his eyes haunted. Emma, if something had happened to you... But it didn't. I'm here. I'm fine. He pulled me against him, his grip almost painful. I can't lose you. You understand that? I can't. You won't. I pressed my face against his chest, breathing in his scent, cologne and coffee and something uniquely him. I'm not going anywhere, but I was starting to feel the weight of the cage, beautiful as it was. I hadn't left the penthouse in a week. Hadn't seen sunlight except through bulletproof glass. The walls were closing in, and I needed air. I want to go outside, I said that afternoon. Just for a walk. Fresh air. Dante looked up from his laptop, his expression immediately wary. It's not safe. It's been a week. You said yourself the Calabresi family has been neutralized. Neutralized doesn't mean eliminated. There could be remnants, people looking for revenge. Then send guards with me. Send a whole army if you want. But Dante, I can't stay locked in here forever. Something flickered across his face, understanding warring with fear. You feel trapped. I feel protected. But yes, sometimes trapped too. I moved to where he sat, kneeling between his legs so I could look up at him. I know you're scared. I know what happened at the gala terrified you. But you can't keep me in a box, no matter how gilded it is. His hands came up to frame my face. The thought of you out there, exposed, vulnerable, it makes me insane. I know, but I need this. Please. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded reluctantly. Tomorrow. Marco, Antonio, and Luca will accompany you. You stay in public places, you don't go anywhere alone, and you keep your phone on at all times. Deal. I kissed him softly. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You haven't seen the armored car I'm making you take. He wasn't joking. The next morning, I found myself climbing into a vehicle that looked like it could withstand a tank assault. Marco drove while Antonio sat beside me, and Luca followed in a second car. It was overkill, but I bit back complaints because I knew this was Dante compromising, and that meant something. We went to a park, one of those carefully maintained green spaces where families gathered and children played. It was a crisp autumn day, the kind where the air smelled like dying leaves and possibility. I breathed deeply, feeling tension I hadn't realized I was carrying start to ease. "Thank you for this," I told Marco, as we walked along a tree-lined path. "Mr. Russo wants you happy." Marco's expression was carefully neutral. "Though he also wants you alive, so please don't wander off." I smiled. "I'll behave." We'd been walking for maybe 20 minutes when I noticed her, a little girl, maybe 5 years old, standing near a fountain looking lost. She had dark curls and huge brown eyes filled with tears. "Marco, that little girl—" "I see her." He was already scanning the area, looking for threats or parents. I approached slowly, crouching down to her level. "Hey, sweetheart, are you okay? Where's your mommy?" She looked at me with those huge eyes, and her lower lip trembled. "I don't know. I was getting ice cream and she was right there, and then she wasn't," and the words tumbled out in a rush before dissolving into sobs. "It's okay. We'll find her. What's your name?" "Sophia." My heart clenched. "That's a beautiful name. I'm Emma. Can you tell me what your mommy looks like?" Before she could answer, a woman came running toward us, her face twisted with relief and fear. "Sophia! Oh my God, Sophia!" The little girl ran to her mother, and they embraced with the desperation of people who'd glimpsed losing each other. The woman looked at me with tears streaming down her face. "Thank you. Thank you so much for staying with her." "Of course. I'm just glad you found each other." As they walked away, hand in hand, something inside me twisted painfully. I watched them disappear into the crowd, and suddenly I couldn't breathe properly. "Miss Cross?" Marco's voice was concerned. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine. Just, can we go back?" The ride home was quiet, and I stared out the window without really seeing anything. That little girl, the way she'd looked so lost and frightened, the relief on her mother's face. It had opened something inside me I'd kept carefully locked away. Dante was waiting when we returned, and he took one look at my face and pulled me into his arms. "What happened?" I told him about the little girl, about the mother's relief, about the ache that had settled in my chest and wouldn't ease. I never had that. I whispered against his chest. Never had someone who'd panic if they lost me, who'd search desperately because I mattered that much. His arms tightened. "You have it now. If I lost you, Emma, there isn't a corner of this earth I wouldn't tear apart to find you. I know." And I did. But sometimes I wonder, what if we have children someday? How do we bring them into this world? "Your world?" He went very still. "Is that something you want? Children?" "I don't know. Maybe, someday." I pulled back to look at him. "Would you want that?" Something vulnerable crossed his face. "I never let myself think about it. My life, what I do, it's not exactly family-friendly. But with you—" He paused, searching for words. "With you, I can imagine things I never allowed myself to want." "Like what?" "Like coming home to more than an empty penthouse. Like having someone call me Dad instead of Mr. Russo or boss. Like," his voice roughened, "like building something that isn't just power and fear. Something real and lasting." The raw honesty in his words undid me. I pulled him down and kissed him with everything I felt, love and hope and fierce determination. "Then we'll figure it out," I said against his lips, "together." Over the next few weeks, something shifted between us. The desperation that had colored our relationship after the gala began to ease into something deeper, more stable. Dante started teaching me about his business. The legitimate parts, at least. Real estate holdings, restaurants, import-export companies. He wanted me to understand his world. All of it, not just the parts that were safe for me to know. I started taking online classes, working toward the degree I'd never been able to afford. Dante had waved away my concerns about cost with that characteristic dismissiveness he used for anything involving money. Education was important, he'd said. He wanted me to have choices, to be able to stand on my own even though he'd never let me fall. We found a rhythm. Mornings tangled together in bed, afternoons where he worked and I studied, evenings that were ours alone. The guards became background noise, their presence comforting rather than confining. And then, 6 weeks after the gala, Isabella Conti walked back into our lives. I was in Dante's office, curled up in the leather chair by the window with a textbook, when Marco knocked and entered, looking tense. "Mr. Russo, there's a situation." Dante looked up from his desk. "What kind of situation?" "Isabella Conti is downstairs. She says she needs to speak with you urgently." I felt Dante's gaze flicker to me before returning to Marco. "Tell her I'm busy. She said to tell you it's about the Calabrese family, that she has information you need." Tension flooded the room. Dante's expression went cold and calculating. "Send her up, but stay close." Marco nodded and disappeared. I started to rise, but Dante shook his head. "Stay. I want you here for this." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." He came around the desk and pressed a kiss to my forehead. "Whatever she has to say, there are no secrets between us. Remember that." Isabella arrived moments later, looking as stunning as always in a designer suit that probably cost more than a car. But there was something different about her, a desperation around the edges, a brittleness to her smile. "Dante." Her eyes slid to me, and her smile tightened. "And the girlfriend. How cozy." "You have 5 minutes, Isabella." "Marco said something about the Calabrese family?" She moved further into the office, her heels clicking on hardwood. "Did you know they were planning the attack at the gala for weeks? That someone gave them your schedule, your security details, everything they needed?" Dante went very still. "How do you know this?" "Because they approached me, asked me to help them." She laughed, but it sounded broken. "They thought because we used to be engaged, because you wronged me by choosing some waitress over me, that I'd want revenge." Every word was a small knife, precisely aimed. I felt my spine straighten, but Dante's hand found mine and squeezed. "And did you? Help them?" "No." She met his gaze steadily. "I told them to go to hell. Whatever we were, Dante, I never wanted you dead." "How magnanimous." His voice was dry. "Why are you here, Isabella? What do you want?" "I want you to know there's a traitor in your organization. Someone close to you who's been feeding information to your enemies. The Calabrese family is just the beginning. There are others waiting, watching for their chance." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. I watched Dante's expression, saw the cold calculation, the fury carefully leashed. "Do you have proof?" "I have names, dates, communications." She pulled a folder from her bag and set it on his desk. Everything I could gather without tipping them off that I was watching. Dante opened the folder, his eyes scanning the contents. I watched his face go from cold to absolutely murderous. "Why bring this to me?" he asked without looking up. "Why not let my enemies destroy me?" Isabella's laugh was bitter, because despite everything, I don't want to see you dead. And because... She glanced at me, and something complicated crossed her face. "Because she looks at you the way I pretended to. The way I wish I actually had. You deserve that, Dante. Even if I couldn't give it to you." The admission seemed to cost her. She straightened her shoulders, armor sliding back into place. "My debt to you is paid. We're even now." She turned to leave, but Dante's voice stopped her. "Isabella." She looked back. "Thank you." She nodded once, then left without another word. The door closed behind her, and Dante immediately pulled out his phone, his voice sharp as he gave rapid orders in Italian. "What does the folder say?" I asked quietly. His jaw was tight with rage. "That Vincent Moretti, the man you met at the gala, has been selling information to my enemies for months. He's been planning a coup, gathering allies, waiting for the right moment to strike. What are you going to do?" He looked at me, and I saw the predator staring back. "What I always do with traitors. I'm going to eliminate the threat." The words should have horrified me, should have made me recoil from the violence they promised. But instead I stood and moved to him, wrapping my arms around his waist. "Then do what you need to do, and come home to me when it's done." His arms came around me, crushing me against him. "I love you, Emma Cross. Do you know that? I'm completely, insanely in love with you." The words stole my breath. We'd danced around it, implied it in 1,000 ways, but he'd never said it outright. "I love you too. So much it terrifies me." He kissed me hard, desperate, like he was trying to memorize the taste of me. "This will be dangerous. I need you to stay here with Marco and..." "I know. I'll stay. I'll be safe." I cupped his face. "But you promise me you'll come back. Promise me, Dante. I promise." Nothing could keep me from you. He left with Antonio and a team of men I'd never seen before. All of them armed and dangerous. The apartment felt empty without him. And I paced like a caged animal, unable to sit still, unable to do anything but worry. Marco watched me with sympathy. He'll be fine, Miss Cross. Mr. Russo always is. You can't promise that. No, Marco agreed. But I can tell you I've seen him handle worse than Vincent Moretti, and come out victorious every time. Hours crawled by. My phone stayed silent. I alternated between staring at it and pacing the floor, wearing a path in the expensive carpet. Night fell, and still nothing. Finally, near midnight, I heard the elevator engage. The doors opened, and Dante stepped out. He was bloodied again. More this time. His shirt torn, a cut above his eye. But he was alive. He was home. I ran to him, and he caught me, lifting me off my feet as he kissed me with desperate relief. "It's over," he murmured against my lips. "Moretti and his allies have been dealt with. The threat is neutralized. Are you hurt?" "Nothing serious. Moretti fought back harder than expected, but..." He set me down and met my eyes. "It's done, Emma. We're safe now. Really safe." I searched his face and saw truth there. Saw exhaustion and relief and the darkness of what he'd done. But underneath it all, I saw the man I loved, complicated, dangerous, mine. "Then let me take care of you," I said softly. I led him to the bathroom and helped him undress, my hands gentle on bruised skin. I cleaned his wounds while he watched me with those dark, intense eyes. Drew him a bath and made him soak while I sat beside the tub, my hand in his. "I killed a man tonight," he said into the quiet. Looked him in the eyes while I did it. "I know. Does it change how you see me?" I thought about it carefully, wanting to be honest. "It reminds me of who you are, what your world demands. But no, it doesn't change how I love you." His hand tightened on mine. "I want to give you more than this, more than blood and violence and constantly looking over our shoulders." "Then give me tomorrow, and the day after that. Give me a lifetime of tomorrows, Dante. That's all I want." Something shifted in his expression, determination settling over his features. "Then that's what you'll have." 3 months later, on a crisp winter morning, I stood in front of a judge in a private ceremony with only Marco, Antonio, and Luca as witnesses. Dante slid a ring onto my finger, platinum with a diamond that caught light and threw rainbows, and promised to love me, protect me, cherish me until death parted us. I made the same promises and meant every word. We'd found something neither of us had been looking for: belonging, home. A future that stretched ahead filled with possibility instead of just survival. Was it conventional? No. Was it perfect? Far from it. But it was ours. And as Dante pulled me into his arms and kissed me while our small audience applauded, I knew with absolute certainty that I'd made the right choice. The waitress who'd been invisible had been seen. The girl who'd had nothing had found everything. I was Emma Russo now, and I was finally completely home.